Welcome to Quranic Connections. I'm Marina, your host and interviewer, on a mission to reimagine our perceptions of the Islamic world by painting a unified artwork of education, Islam, and community engagement. As someone dedicated to developing and designing curriculum content, I've taken on this role with the goal of fostering a meaningful shift in understanding the world around us. Today we have Ali, welcome, a poetic ninja and a project coordinator in a Tier 1 construction company. Now, when he's not overseeing projects, Ali ninja kicks verses that have earned him recognition on platforms like ABC, TEDx Sydney, and Parliament House. A 2018 graduate from UNSW, Ali's journey intertwines his professional life with a passion for poetry and photography. Join us as we uncover the unique balance Ali strikes between the world of construction and the artistic realm, exploring the intersections between community, Islam, and the workplace. Stay tuned for an enriching conversation ahead. Now that we've set the stage and introduced Ali's fascinating journey, let's kick off our conversation. How connected are you to community, Ali?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me on, Marina. It's quite the introduction. So with community, I think to make sense of how connected I am, it would be good to give some context. So I always kind of grew up in the area during work hours, if you want to take it that way, because I did go to Alzara College, and then Arcana, and then high school at Kingsgrove. So I was always there during, during the day and whatever programs over the weekend. And my mum took us to the volunteering work, and I was our Muslim Women's Association at the time. So I was always in the area, but I lived, outside it in the Bankstown area. So as someone who was there with the boys in the group from a young age, I wasn't always there. I would, tag along sometimes. I feel like the best way to put this is I'm almost someone on the bench. I'm an extra. I make cameos. Some of the boys joke that they only ever see me on Ramadan, Ashura, and Eid, just because I kind of do my own thing away from the spotlight and then come in when they need me on those
So you
events.
identified community as a place.
In this aspect, yes, because if I take it if we take it as defined as a place, just to reiterate this point, is well, I think of like it's not one place, but I think of most of my community lives in that St. George area or has moved out, but we all meet in the St. George area. So the different programs in the centers, and I feel like that's where I see most of my community. It's great that we've expanded online, and it's easier to stay in touch and share information and whatnot, and that is amazing. But there is nothing like that physical space, and I feel physical space always strengthens a community because you're able to discuss things more privately. That there's more of a if you want to have a one-on-one chat with someone, it's a lot easier and a lot more open to actually sit down with them in person as opposed to online.
And so
so I'm can yep.
Yeah, do you feel like, sorry, I just noticed that you referred to community. Yes, it's a place, but I also noticed that you work towards it being on focus to Islam in a way. So it was always, it was closely related to the mosque that you attended or the school that you attended. And do you feel that it was somewhat connected in a way?
I definitely feel
defined it in a way, like in this context.
Yeah, because I feel like the close community used to, and people who are more likely to understand your values and your stance on certain things and your actions, that you don't always have to explain why I can't go here and why I can't do that. Especially living in the West as we do, people always will look at you weird for your certain choices, or why are you going there? Why don't you just come this place? So it's having a community that is based on your religion. Means you don't have to explain every action and they'll just get it. And it means you're more likely to go to the right places together or motivate someone to go to the places. So, whether it's to the mosque or whatever, and then you can grab a feed afterwards or...
and you can feed on halal food.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Spiritual food and then physical food. And I feel like that is an important factor in which people underestimate the value because sure, like you can get along with lots of people. I have many non-Muslim friends, but it doesn't mean that every setting is appropriate. You know, not every
Nice.
table is ours to sit at.
As well, I love the way
Um,
you put that. It's really clever because it's that feeling connected to the people that you're sort of, hanging out with, just without having to speak words. They get you, sort of thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes you more likely to think of your actions and say you had like an intrusive thought of somewhere that might not necessarily be the best place to go. And if they're your real mates, they might just, on the side call you out and say, look, I don't think this is appropriate for us to go. What about we do one, two, three instead? And I feel like keeping each other accountable on the right path, as a Muslim community, then what we can expect from ourselves and from our friends has a positive domino effect, as opposed to uh, having something that, all right, yeah, but we made this concession this time. And concessions always turn into this massive butterfly effect. And people don't realize it until they take a step back and it's like, okay, well, how did we get here? And you hear about some of these stories in the community and you're just like, but who tried to help them at that time?
Yeah. That feeling of connectedness, if they had that connectedness within the community that was, sort of following their ethos and values, and they would have possibly just flourished in that community rather than having to seek it elsewhere.
Correct.
Do you feel like they need that community support?
Whether that's support or validation or reassurance, but sometimes it's just like a hand that's outreach to just help them in. Just, they don't need to be active, but just present.
Do you feel like we have to wait for a community to call us on board, or do you feel like we have the responsibility to find that community and sort of, push ourselves in there and find our place in there, rather than always sort of saying, oh, I can't find it, they're not like me, etc.?
I think there are two answers to that question, and both play a part in collaboration. So one is that the people who are able, who are extroverted, who are active in the community, it is their job to make a space and facilitate a space, whether online or physical, to make programs and make, little events where people are welcome and it doesn't feel like it's purely a religious event. It may be an event in a religious space that is a non-religious event. I remember there was at some of the centers there was a games night. It wasn't, we're gonna read Quran, we're just gonna do this. It's like no, it was like guys, just come in, relax, Friday night, games night.
And that's what we need that space to be able to do those activities in that halal or that fitting environment sort of thing.
Yeah. And so to answer the second part of your question is, yes, the community does need to reach out, and there are certain individuals who are capable of facilitating that. But I think in people themselves, to just have a little bit more confidence to actually say, hey, I need a bit of help, throw me a life ring.
Nice.
And because, or is it like you take one step towards God and he takes like 10 towards you? I know that's probably not the right number, but there's a metaphorical saying like that. Yeah,
right. Yeah, definitely.
There is something along those lines where, if you take a step towards God, like it's like the physical manifestation of that in a totally non-religious aspect is like when you see someone stuck on the side of the road, looking for help with their car, 99% of people won't stop. But if they see you trying to push your own car, someone's more than likely to come and help you push together.
I like that. I love that analogy. Well done. So in saying that, I'm going to take you on to how connected are you to Islam, which I feel are pretty much hand in hand. Community works with Islam in a way. Yeah.
Yes.
You feel like the sort of a little bundle.
It does.
But I really want you to still stick to the question: how connected are you to Islam, though? Because I feel like it drove you in that direction.
Yeah. So I'll segue. I'll answer that collaborative between Islam and community, and then I'll segue into Islam. So being in those community events definitely like lifts my spirits and makes me feel closer to Islam always. Like, when we have the programs, when either I'm shooting a program or one of the programs asks me to perform, I get to know the organizers. I feel like a connectedness in the place. All of that has massive contribution to my increasing my faith and increasing my faith in the community. So it is a very wholesome feeling. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And not nothing that, sure, you can try put it into words, but it's not always going to explain how you feel, because you just feel better. Even if it was a sad event, you will always walk away with your soul feeling better. Um, so that's on the collaboration between Islam and community. Now, Islam itself, the best way to define this, I think, and the best way people will probably understand this, is it's not like a graph where it's like, yes, I'm here and there, because Islam has, or I think religion in itself has many aspects. So, you've got like your beliefs, which is your ideas and your values. You've got your doctrines, jurisprudence, your practices.
Mm.
So all of that plays a role. And I think the best way to explain this is, if you think of like a player or on any game, whether it's Mario Kart or FIFA, where you think of the attributes of a player and their skills, what's, their skills, their speed, their handling, all of that. If you apply
Yeah.
that to what level am I at with my practices? What level am I at with spirituality? What level am I at with my reading?
Mm.
What level am I at with how I treat others, my charity? Whether you break down not just the pillars, but what it means to be a Muslim in your practice and your knowledge. If you break
Mm-hmm.
that down to a list of statistics, and then you have that, that hexagonal or octagonal graph, and it shows where you are at each point, and that may shift in time.
Mm.
Sometimes you may be trying to do better with your religion, and then you're tested, and you may initially pass the test, but feel like, oh man, I'm being
Like a
religious. Why am I being
challenge.
tested?
Mm.
Yeah, and you're like,
It's
oh,
almost
why am
like
I being?
like you said, it's a game. Like, you said Mario Kart, and I love how you use that aspect of like a sports card. You know how the kids always create those sports cards at school, and they just sort
Yeah,
of put their, uh, and I felt like you summed it up in a way that you're on the field in a way, and sometimes your
yeah,
energy levels, and sometimes you do well and you do that amazing kick and you score that goal, but sometimes
mm,
you're tested and you're challenged with those people
yeah.
around you, all those obstacles in a way.
Or you just miss,
Mm.
and you've put in all this effort. So even like if it feels like, you're given a test, you passed, but you're like, okay, but why was I giving this test and being more religious? So
Mm.
you may like initially pass that test, but feel like you've drawn back on another area. And then something happens to show you that why something didn't happen, and in having tawakkul, and that raises you another level. And be like, okay, now I understand. And that's happened many a times to me where it's like, oof, I thought this was a good thing, why didn't it happen? And something better came along. So all of those instances have raised my level of tawakkul. Um, I feel like I would define my connection to Islam very differently now compared to a few years ago, compared to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I enjoyed, the community aspect. I feel like, yeah, we're going to the mosque. I was excited about the things. And then now it's like, my connectedness comes through my furthering knowledge, my appreciation of the knowledge,
Mm.
of the Quran, of how it debunks a lot of things that are said about us all the time, um, and how it has proofs.
Nice. And does writing your poetry actually serve your response to the call to connect with Islam in a way?
Lately, very much so.
Okay, cool. Because I've
I
I've
would,
picked up on some of your beautiful poetry, and I've noticed that you're bringing in those, is like, so it's not so much Islamic, but it's who you are as a person. You practice those beliefs, and they come through somehow, and those cultural and those community talks, they come through your poetry, and sometimes those creative spaces are places where you can actually express those and try to connect through that. It's like almost like a little avenue where, oh, this is
yeah,
how I know how to connect, you know? Do you feel that in a way?
very much so. So just like for a bit of context, last year was the first year I was asked to perform at a Islamic event, like perform a poem, and it was during Ashura, and I was a little nervous because it's like, oh man, everyone community is going to say, you always overthink it as a first event, and I think part of being an artist is there's always a point of self doubt in your
Mm.
capabilities. So I mean, alhamdulillah, it went well, and then it led me to doing a lot better and writing that poem a lot better. And then this year I was asked to perform again, and it went much better. And that
Trusting
got me
yourself.
to
I think
yeah,
trusting yourself that Islam is not so much these black and white where we have to stand on stage and say how things are done, but you can
mm,
express yourself through language. The Quran itself is actually made up of figurative language, and sometimes we don't realize that we can express ourselves in that way as well.
Correct.
And you don't
Correct,
feel
very
too
much.
scared, to like sort of step back a little bit. I'm not sure if I can express
Yeah.
myself in that way.
And if
Yeah,
you never do, you'll never get better. Because
yeah.
in last year's performance, I realized, okay, this didn't sound great on stage. This didn't quite hit with the crowd. So I made those adjustments. And then this year went a lot better, that I was asked to perform another one. And at that point, you go back to community and religion, and all right, that built it a bit more. So from a strictly, does writing come through with poetry? When I was commissioned to write something specifically for religion, it really came through, because that was like,
Conscious.
blinders on. Yeah, but it was also blinders on. This is what we're focusing on. But then also, just because I am very political, it does come through with religious proofs in what I'm trying to say, to show these this isn't coming from me. I've done my research, and I feel like this is the proof of why I'm saying this, and
Okay, yes.
also
Always that
how it backs
responsibility.
it up. Yep, and to show
Nice.
that Islam doesn't mean, okay, here's my religion aside. It's not
Exactly.
part of me. No, it's part of everything I'm saying and coming through, because I truly believe it in my essence, in my being, and that it does transcend many boundaries. It doesn't have, not everything's segregated. Islam is a way of life, literally
Beautiful.
a lifestyle, and
Exactly.
I feel like
And
it helps you through discipline.
And this takes you on to exactly how connected are you to workplace, because now we've got communities driving Islam, and then now you're in your workplace, and like you said, it's who you are. But how connected are you to workplace? Now you can bring in Islam, you can bring in community. It's completely up to you. This is like sort of separate. You feel like sometimes you have to separate it, but I'm just going to keep it up to you. I want to see what you say. Let's go.
Okay, so are we talking workplace as my office or place of work itself?
I would say it's something that you consider to be your work, something that gives you an income, your livelihood, I know that photography is something that you do. I know that you write poems and you stand up on those stages and you kick them off. But I find that we always identify workplace as a place that we practice what we've sort of studied at university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's fair enough. So my professional role is like a project coordinator. So I oversee trades. I deal with the clients and the consultants, from engineers, architects, all of that. Probably at one point I was a lot more connected than I am now. When I was doing a lot more problem solving and a bit less paperwork, it was a lot more engaging for me, because it's a lot more fun to interact with people and problem solve with people. You've got a certain deadline, something goes wrong on site. How can we streamline this? What are our implications? So it's probably not the peak of my connection to my workplace, only because of certain aspects of the role. You're not going to enjoy everything. Some things you just need to do because you have to hone that skill, or you have to learn a skill. And I think that is part of everyone's job. Sure, some people might love their job more than others, depending what they do. But I think everyone's job, and we have to be cognizant of this, is that there are certain things you may not enjoy, and you just have to push through. And you understand that I feel like it can be broken up into thirds. A third is things you really enjoy. A third is things that are kind of neutral, that you just get by. And a third, that things you may not like. And it's knowing when to understand, this is the reason for my work. And shaghl, like work is ibadah, and it's worship, and we're providing for your family and making sure your family has stability. And for me, I feel like there are many blessings I'm probably not what's the word? I'm probably not deserving of, but it's probably given to me, just because whenever it comes to work, I've always tried to stay on my wudu before prayer time, and then just as soon as it's prayer time, if it's lunch, many a time when we're short on time, I said I'd rather pray than eat. If I have if I'm on a tight schedule at work, I would rather pray than eat. So I would try to straight away pray on time, if it doesn't mean I eat till the end of the day. And I feel like that is a big factor in it. And the reason why it's helped with the workplace is, early days was a bit harder. There weren't many Muslims in the company at all. There were a few, not many practicing. So they kind of viewed me as a religious one, even though I don't view myself as that religious. I tell them, I go, doing the basics doesn't make you religious. It just makes you a Muslim.
Well, the term
Uh,
religious, I think, also needs to be wiped out because
yeah,
I don't feel like it's a term that needs to be used in the first place.
yeah. So but when you work, so my company was very like Anglo based with a few like other, Europeans and whatnot. But I was there. This is my seventh year with them now, and just the influx of Arabs and Europeans that have come in lately is different. But early days, you had to kind of explain, what a lot of what
Yeah,
you do and why.
absolutely. Mm,
Um, and I always saw that as a responsibility. I go, okay, if you're the only one doing this, you have to make sure you do your work correctly. You have to make sure you're ethical in your practices. You
character.
have to show them Islam through your character, like you said,
Mm,
and through your practices and your work ethic and being honest in all that you do.
beautiful.
And
100%.
yeah,
I think it came through in a way that you said, community did come through again. Islam did come through to your workplace because
yeah.
they naturally come through. And like you said, it's just being that character and being that person in that workplace and finding your calling within the workplace. If you look at your workplace as a place for growth, what can I gain from my workplace to help me grow in other areas of life?
So there was the part you touched on with regards to, having those skills at work. And actually I had a chat to one of my good friends last week, and it's like, okay, you may not enjoy this part of work, however, I'm going to use all these skills I'm learning to use externally. So when it comes to we've got parts of government as our client, so it's when running those meetings with them, it's learning to interview better, it's learning to discuss with things people better, writing all those reports. I'm using that as a skill where I think, okay, how can this be more concise, more streamlined, more efficient as a process and understanding? So if I give this to someone or someone picks the report up in a year, it's like, what did we build? Why did we build it? And how did we build it? Without, them having to read the whole report. If they can read that in a nice summary, I'm using those skills to, when I make my videos on whatever topic it may be, online outside of work, I can, transcend those skills, bring them over and summarize that well. And then just in normal interactions, when you've got to make certain interviews, or when I have to chair certain meetings, okay, I need to make sure everyone's opinions are heard. Everyone is, on the ball. We are efficient in our meetings, and the meetings I'm at a point where the meetings are starting to go higher up. I'm meeting with project directors and certain things, and they're asking me for updates. So, I'm able to use my words
Adjust,
effectively.
yeah, adjust,
Yeah.
and also use that skill elsewhere. Wow, that's right.
And I said, okay, if you don't like this, just at a certain point, just take it in a way where you're able to use those skills elsewhere. And that's what I'm trying to do is, when I'm interviewing people or being interviewed, I'm able to at least, refine my communication skills, written and oral.
Perfect. Well done. That's amazing. I love how you've just taken those skills and now you're going to apply it into your world, wherever it may be. Sometimes we don't have to look at it as just a workplace, check in, check out, clock in, clock off, done, dusted, and then go home. But finding skills that you can gain and also finding an avenue where you can express yourself through what you've done, the artistic realm of your life. So that's somewhere that sort of keeps you sort of sane or happy in a way, like, just finding that balance. And I think that's the most important. And you've expressed it so beautifully in this podcast. I have nothing more to say and nothing else to ask. I think what you've done is amazing and what you're doing is amazing, and keep going at what you're doing because you are an example to a lot of us. You inspire us in many ways that you may not think that you inspire us in, but it's your character. It's the way you present yourself. It's the way you are able to be you in different levels of life through community, through Islam, and through your workplace. So thank you, Ali. It was a great chat, and good luck with everything in life.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on and the kind words. And inshallah, I do live up to what you've explained about me. And inshallah, all the success with the podcast.
Thank you.